The summer of 1940 painted the skies above England with both beauty and terror. Sunlight broke through scattered clouds, casting golden rays on the rolling green countryside, while above, the roar of engines and the shriek of machine guns announced the great struggle for survival, the Battle of Britain. Flight Lieutenant Eddie Clarke of No. 92 Squadron sat hunched in the cockpit of his Supermarine Spitfire, sweat trickling down beneath his oxygen mask. The morning air was crisp, but up here at 20,000 feet, it was thin and biting cold. His fingers rested on the control column, tense, waiting. The radio crackled with the clipped voice of Squadron Leader John Stone. Bandits. 11 o'clock. Angels 20. Messerschmitts. Tighten up, lads. Eddie's pulse quickened. He squinted into the bright haze of the rising sun. Black specks grew larger, 12 Bf-109s cutting across the sky with predatory grace. The enemy fighters swept ahead of a lumbering formation of Heinkel bombers, their silhouettes ominous against the blue. For Eddie, every encounter brought the same memory. His brother's Hurricane shot down over the channel just weeks before. He had not recovered the body. The grief burned, and now every Messerschmitt represented revenge. "Here we go," Eddie muttered, pushing the throttle forward. The Merlin engine roared, the nose of the Spitfire lifting as it carved into the sky. The two squadrons collided in a storm of fire and steel. Machine guns rattled, tracers streaked like fiery comets. Eddie banked sharply, a Bf-109 flashing past, its yellow nose glinting. He rolled into pursuit, heart hammering. The Messerschmitt pilot was skilled, pulling into a steep climb, then rolling inverted, diving away in a screaming arc. Eddie stuck to him, the Spitfire's elliptical wings slicing through the air with unmatched agility. He squeezed the trigger. The 8.303 Brownings spat fury. Tracers laced the sky, grazing the enemy fuselage but not striking home. "Damn it," Eddie hissed. The 109 broke into a scissor maneuver, forcing Eddie to overshoot. At once, another Messerschmitt swooped down from above, guns blazing. Bullets stitched across Eddie's port wing, shredding fabric and sending sparks across his canopy. He yanked the stick hard right, the Spitfire shuddering as it barely escaped a deadly burst. "Clarke, brake left!" the radio screamed. Eddie rolled violently, pulling into a dive, his Spitfire groaning as it plunged. The Messerschmitt followed, a shark hunting its prey. Eddie's vision blurred from the G-forces as he pulled level just above the cloud tops, sweat dripping into his eyes. Then he saw him, the enemy ace. The yellow-nosed Bf-109 leveled alongside him, no more than 50 yards away. For a heartbeat, Eddie glimpsed the pilot, a pale, sharp-featured man with a black scarf, his eyes cold as winter. The German raised 2 fingers in a mocking salute before rolling away and climbing. "Not today," Eddie growled. The chase was on. For 5 minutes that felt like eternity, the two fighters danced through the clouds. The Spitfire was nimble, but the Messerschmitt could climb faster. They twisted, turned, and clawed for the advantage, spiraling upward into the sun before diving in screaming arcs back toward Earth. Eddie's ammunition was running low. Each burst from his guns sent shudders through the airframe, but the German always escaped with a flick of the rudder, a brutal dive, or a perfect roll. The enemy ace was toying with him. Radio chatter filled Eddie's ears. His squadron was scattered. He heard cries for help, frantic calls, bursts of static. Somewhere below, Heinkels droned on, bombing London. But Eddie could think only of the man before him. They were locked together in their own private war. The Messerschmitt dived suddenly, then pulled into a steep climb, stalling for a split second. Eddie saw his chance. He pulled the trigger, guns spitting fire. Bullets tore into the German's wingtip, ripping fabric, trailing smoke. The 109 rolled, wobbling, yet still it flew. The German pulled up, forcing his stricken plane higher, gambling on altitude. Eddie followed, his Spitfire straining, the Merlin engine howling. The two planes punched through a high cloud bank, emerging into dazzling sunlight. For a moment the world was silent, just two machines clawing into the heavens. Eddie squeezed the trigger again. Empty clicks. His guns had run dry. No! His chest tightened. The German must have realized it too. The Bf-109 wheeled around, descending directly upon him, cannons blazing. Explosions rocked Eddie's fuselage. The Spitfire shuddered, smoke trailing from its engine. "Come on, girl, hold together," he begged, gripping the stick. The Messerschmitt lined up for the kill. In that instant, time slowed. Eddie's mind flashed with memories. His brother waving from his hurricane before his final sortie, his mother's quiet tears at the kitchen table, the promise he made to fight until England stood free. He would not die running. With a sudden burst of resolve, Eddie pulled back on the stick, climbing straight into the sun. The Spitfire rattled, smoke belching, but it held. The German followed, blinded by the blazing light. Eddie rolled inverted, cutting throttle, letting the Spitfire slip into a stall turn. The world spun. For a moment, Eddie felt weightless. Then his Spitfire dropped behind the Messerschmitt, descending out of the sun like a hawk. The German tried to roll, but his damaged wing faltered. Eddie rammed the throttle forward. With no bullets left, only one choice remained. He aimed the Spitfire's propeller and wing directly at the Messerschmitt's tail. Impact. The world exploded in screeching metal and tearing canvas. Eddie's Spitfire clipped the 109's tailplane, sending it spiraling into a flat spin. The German ace's cockpit canopy blew off, a figure ejecting into the void as his fighter disintegrated. Eddie's Spitfire reeled, shuddering violently. Warning lights flared, smoke filled the cockpit. He coughed, fighting for breath, hands trembling on the controls. The engine stuttered, coughed, and died. Silence engulfed him. Below, the English countryside spread like a green quilt. Eddie yanked the canopy open, the wind howling. He pulled the release on his harness, grabbed the ripcord. One last glance at his faithful Spitfire, her wings riddled, scarred, but undefeated. Then he leapt. The parachute burst open above him, jerking his body violently. Eddie drifted downward, watching as the Messerschmitt plunged like a stone into the fields, erupting in fire. His Spitfire glided a few miles farther before nosediving into a meadow, breaking apart in a silent crash. Eddie floated down, heart pounding, tears stinging his eyes. He had survived. He had avenged his brother. As his boots touched the earth of his homeland, cheers echoed from farmers who had witnessed the duel. They ran toward him, waving, shouting. Eddie stumbled, exhausted, but he managed a faint smile. Above, the sky was strangely quiet. Smoke trails lingered, a reminder of the battle. The war was far from over, but for now, the skies belonged to the Spitfire.